Welcome back. So, £2.5 million. That's the cost of a new mega mosque, which is currently under construction near the Lake District, aimed, they say, at serving the Muslim community, which makes up just 0.3% of the local population. So this is the first Islamic centre. It's going to be built in Dalton in Furness. It's received planning permission in 2022 and it's set to be completed later this year, if, of course, they can find the money, which they are now begging for.
We only have enough funds to last us till April. Otherwise, the construction work will stop. I'm reaching out to you in a moment of critical need for our children, for my brothers and sisters, and for the Muslim reverts joining our community.
But hold on a minute, because what didn't get the green light by the same council, all right? It was a children's home for young people with special educational needs. That was rejected, as far as we can understand it from the planning forms, because of concerns over, quotes, noise and disturbance. Is this fair, do we think? And should the locals be concerned at the stated aims of this new mega mosque, which says it wants to turn the lakes into a destination place for Muslim families? Well, I'm joined now by writer and broadcaster Emma Trimble. Emma, thank you very much. Great to have you on the show. So what are your thoughts about this? You're religious yourself. Is there anything wrong with having a ginormous, whopping, great big place of worship somewhere?
Well, I mean, we have freedom of religion, obviously, and I think that one of the reasons why people have been so concerned about this, regardless of the fact that we obviously have freedom of religion in this country, is that we keep seeing these big displays of Islam in the public space, whether it's the Ramadan lights in London. And I think people, you know, fairly, we would think it was absolutely reasonable for any other country, any other culture anywhere in the world to be slightly, you know, set off kilter by a rapid pace of cultural and religious change. And particularly when you see this, you know, monumental mosque in the rolling hills of the Lake District, just outside of a town that, according to the last census, only has 11 Muslims. Now, one of the people who's behind this project is claiming that this is to serve 300 Muslims. They talk about 40 to 50 families who are involved in working at the hospital. But according to the last census, there's only 11 Muslims, people who identify as Muslims in the area. It is by and large a Christian community, and probably more than the national average, in fact. And so it's strange. It seems almost quite astroturfed. And obviously they are, you know, talking about this being something for future generations of Muslims. They're obviously expecting to, you know, to want to support, have the infrastructure there for a larger, growing Muslim community. And obviously they're raising a lot of money for it at the moment.
One of the things that surprises me about this is, so I used to live and work in that area. OK, and one of the jobs that I always used to get sent out to as a local reporter was local planning meetings, which was like torture, right? But I had to sit there and listen to examples of people who wanted to put double glazing in a farmhouse who weren't allowed to because of some archaic planning rule. I also see things recently, that same council has just rejected, as we understand it, a children's home for people with special educational needs because they said that they were worried that it might basically bring too many people to the area and it might cause a bit of a disturbance to the local area. But you can have a whopping great big mega mosque in Dalton in Furness, which they haven't secured the funding for. So currently it's just a building site. I wonder what's gone on there, Emma.
Yeah, I mean, it's not unusual for planning permission to be given before people have the funding to actually complete the building. But it is astonishing, especially, like you say, it's in this place of amazing natural beauty. And it is this absolute behemoth. And like you mentioned, you know, there are plenty of other examples of planning permission being turned down for other projects. And I think it's quite clear, like as you mentioned yourself, Patrick, in your introduction there, that the population of Muslims in the area is small. It seems that they want to attract maybe holiday makers or maybe even a growing bring Islamic community to the area. We've seen previous efforts on the part of some activists to try and get more Muslims out, hiking, for example. If you remember, they put up signs pointing to Mecca in the Peak District at one point. And I noticed that on one of the fundraising, and there are a number of different fundraising pages for this particular Islamic Center, but on one of the fundraising pages, it says very clearly, I'll read it verbatim, that they're fundraising to help establish this beautiful symbol of Islam for the lakes. So there is obviously a kind of symbolic element to this being built in this area. And I think that, that's something that, at least when you look at the way that people have been reacting online to this from all around the country, people feel that this is trying to kind of send a message. The Muslim community have arrived in the lakes.
Is there an issue, do you think, with the idea that... Because this is going to be the argument, and I can guarantee you what certain people in the local press... I know it relatively well. Like I said, I spent a couple of years up there, and Tim Farron is one of the local MPs, Lib Dem, former Lib Dem leader. The actual seat that it's in is Labour. So you've got quite a lot of left-wing, pro... Well, what would you say, relatively, multiculturalism and all of that stuff, people there. Is there a risk that if locals say... I don't want a mega mosque here, that they're just all going to be called racist? I mean, is that racist, do you think?
Or Islamophobic. And I think this is what I meant when I said, at the beginning there, that in any other country, in any other community, we would think it was perfectly acceptable to say that for the people of a particular culture to say that they are not comfortable with the pace and of rapid cultural and religious change, particularly it's one thing in urban areas like London, Birmingham, Manchester that are sort of used to this, whereas in places like the lakes, it's quite a statement to have an Islamic centre on this scale in a population where there really aren't that very many Muslims. And so we've seen it already with the way that the Quran seems to be effectively treated as if it is a sacred text by the law. All of this talk of the introduction of a new Islamophobia definition, which would effectively function as a backdoor blasphemy law. I think people are feeling less and less able to express criticisms or even to just express, a very reasonable sense of discomfort with the pace of change. I'm not a Christian, so obviously, I'm not going to be pleased at seeing the success that Islam might have in proselytizing or expanding its community within the United Kingdom. But to say that would result in you potentially being accused of Islamophobia. So I think people feel that, they can't necessarily air their criticisms as they might like to.
Well, yeah, I suspect that is the case. But, hey, look, we'll have to wait and see. It'll be interesting to see whether or not we still get claims that the British countryside is racist when one of the most iconic bits of British countryside allows a £2.5 million mega mosque to be built to, in part, as they self-declare, to, I think, entice other Muslims into the British countryside. So there we go. Emma, thank you very, very much. Emma Trimble there. Fantastic stuff, as always. Well, we contacted Westmoreland and Furness Council. They said the cost of the proposed development or how it is funded is not a matter for the council. Our role as the statutory planning authority is to determine whether the application accords with planning policy and to make a decision accordingly. They refuse to tell us how many Muslim visitors there are to the area every single year or how many Muslims actually live there at that particular moment in time, or to comment on why they also refused a new children's home in an area about 45 minutes down the road. But anyway,